Kobo Abe's Woman in the Dunes is by all means an existential novel. It has truly a timeless and layered story about existence and being, especially in an age where we are so proud that we could choose and do as we please. Yet there's one thing that's so difficult to find, and despite how hard we look and search for it, we always seem to lack meaning. A meaning to act on something, do something, or just something to live for, really. And you have to wonder how much of your life is just an attempt to stay afloat until you find the ultimate meaning to exist. Our story begins with a man, Nikki Junpei, who is a school teacher in Japan who enjoys gathering bugs in his me time. He enjoys the activities so much, he goes to a remote village in Japan to find the ultimate sand bug. The area is completely surrounded by sand, and here he has his first contemplations about sand and whether one can even survive in this environment. The school teacher didn't keep an eye on the clock and had no way to return home by bus. Luckily, he stumbled upon some polite, though kind of backwards village people that offered a place to stay. The location was inside a sand pit where a woman lived all by her lonesome. Little did he know that the villagers actually lured him into a trap. Nikki was absolutely outraged by this decision. He makes a defense for himself to the woman that he is not some kind of bum or tramp, that he pays taxes and has a permanent residence. He appeals to his subjectivity, his individuality, as he is no slave after all, and this work of shoveling sand can be done by more primitive creatures than him, like a monkey, for example. The woman, who is also a villager but is left in the same predicament of having to shovel sand, says to him that it's a form of duty for every villager to participate in shoveling sand, to be faithful to the spirit and love of the motherland, she tells the teacher. But there are more practical reasons too. She says that the village still holds on only because we dig the sand without restraint and protect it from perishing. The school teacher is kind of dumbfounded and sees the suffocating predicament of the villagers, that this is just simply no way to live. He remarks on the silly nature of the villagers and at their silly attempt to stop the inevitable. The sand will come and it will destroy the village. It's only a matter of time. The sand strikes us as something that needs overcoming. It is a problem for both Nikki and, more importantly, for the villagers. And it's an enemy that's practically undefeatable. Sand is constantly changing and shifting, made up of various minerals as well. It aims to destroy, not by a conscious effort, but it's innate in its nature to be so devastating for people. The sand metaphor is a powerful one. You can see the sand as this almighty force of destruction that goes against the villagers and their old way of life in particular. Sand can wipe out the tradition, but there are just a few people keeping it alive, albeit perhaps in an absurd and drastic effort that requires the imprisonment of others. Junpei sees this futility and absurdity and even begins offering the villagers solutions of escaping this predicament via planting trees or cooperating with government. However, the villagers, unsurprisingly, deny all efforts from Junpei. The sand is incredibly pervasive, just penetrating the body, fueling the nostrils, and your stomach might even be filled with sand. And this is no way to live for Nikki. He tries to resist the coercive power of the sand, which, as we saw, the lady has just given up. One of his various forms of resistance was to refuse to be useful to the workforce and do not shovel the sand. But this was only a temporary solution as well. It was either the sand that will swallow up the house inside the pit, or the villagers wouldn't provide him with necessary supplies to survive. Nikki also resorts to more drastic efforts and tries to escape his imprisonment. He tries to run away at least 3 times. 2 of them fail and were absurd attempts, but he finally and successfully does so on the third attempt. He heads for the outskirts of the village. Overpowered by a feeling of nervousness, he does not know where to go. He's truly free to choose where he pleases, but he has a difficult time of finding a way back home. Eventually, through his dizziness, he is caught and once again put up to the task of shoveling sand. While the man initially rejects this new way of life, I would say that he eventually starts to change a bit. He starts to see the bliss mundane work can offer. In fact, there's also a peculiar moment in the story where, even though he's still trying to escape, to evade his captives, you can see that despite all that, he starts to see the freedom in his imprisonment. As he tries to fight the sand and the villagers one last time, he accidentally even finds a way to thrive in this environment by discovering a way to create water. After some time in the dunes, the ladder gets deployed when it becomes apparent that the woman with whom Nikki has been living all this time may have suffered a miscarriage. The villagers get the woman out of the pit, but they leave Nikki inside the pit and the ladder as well. As he slowly climbs the ladder and no one is there to stop him, Nikki realizes that he has been given free rein to choose. He could very easily just stay in the pit with his mundane work and potential wife and child, or make a return to his homeland, his old job and whatnot. At the end though, faced with this choice, he clearly chooses the life of the village, where he feels more at home in the community, where he even remarks that maybe he can teach the villagers of how to extract water from the sand just like he did. He ponders on some other ways on how he might be able to impact the community in a more positive manner, the same community that jailed him in the pit. Was this some kind of manifestation of Stockholm Syndrome? I wouldn't say so. I feel like in the end, what happens to Nikki is that he finally understands that he's actually free, that he can choose to be free. Now, there's an opportunity for him to return to his school job, which throughout the novel, it is stated that he didn't necessarily like that job so much, and one of the main reasons why he might have enjoyed being outside to gather bugs was because of his alienating job back in Tokyo. It would be quite wrong to assume that, the village is some kind of bastion of freedom. I feel like that's also not the case, but he does realize that in either place, whether it be the village or the old job in Tokyo, that he is kind of trapped. One way or the other, he is supposed to try and make what he can in the environment that he is. He is, imprisoned, you could say, in a metaphorical sense, in either environment. And in the end, he still privileges to stay in the pit rather than return to his old social status, as well as to get his old job back and perhaps enjoy an apartment in Tokyo. For him, it was way more important to actually find freedom where he can. And in this case, him finding freedom meant that he was able to create meaning in a difficult environment. In other words, he didn't just shovel sand to survive, but he survived to take responsibility for his life.